Hi, I'm Laura Brignola from Aspen University. I'm here to talk to you today about technology impacts on business and vice versa. Like which is it? Does technology impact business or does business impact technology? So I wanted to bring to you today three objectives I wanted to get out of this conversation. One is with technology versus business, which one drives which. The other is about strategy and competition as it relates to technology. And how does technology come into play there? And then the last was the security and business drivers, like how is technology related to each other. So I read a statement about an innovator named William Pollard, who indicated that learning and innovation go hand in hand. The arrogance of success is to think that what you did yesterday will be sufficient for tomorrow. This ties directly into technology and business impact because as technology changes, the world of business should try to keep pace and keep up. However, this doesn't mean that business absolutely changes. It just changes the way they do business, right? So the way that they, from a core perspective, we'll get into that a little bit more, what makes up a core business and what makes up, and how technology interacts with that. We'll get into more detail. So this is because customers not only expect business to be up to date on the latest and greatest technology, but also and we need to be ready to have innovative ways to do business with them. So we live in a world where technology is pretty much running most of our daily lives, right? So mostly everyone has some type of mobile device, whether be using it for simple voice communications, social media, email, watching videos, or whatever, gaming. It's a way for them to stay connected to the rest of the world by using a mobile device and staying on top of the latest and greatest technologies. And it's also important because workers within the workplace, within the business, want to be able to have mobile working. Being able to work mobily is important to some of them, right? So there was a research article done by RCR Wireless back in 2017 that published a prediction around global mobile workforce, where their prediction is by 2022, 42.5% of the people will be a mobile workforce, which is up from 38.8% in 2016. So you may ask, what does this have to do with technology? Well, it has everything to do with technology and the way we do business. So today, workers use more mobile devices, whether it be tablets, wearables, ultrabooks, or whatever they have as their primary device. And this goes into what we call the BYOD era, right? So bring your own device means, people can use whatever they're comfortable with so they can do their work more effectively and efficiently. In the same article that I referenced, it was by 2025, they thought that 70% of the workforce will be millennials. So that was very interesting, I thought. So, and most millennials will probably adhere to this, but they feel that being able to do their job from wherever they are and be able to be mobile is what makes them excel at what they do, right? So need to stay up on the demand, and the way to do that is understand your advanced business functions and then understand how technology plays a role in that. So wanted to also talk about one of the other topics that I thought was interesting, or quote. It was around competition. So competition is a process driven by the perennial gale of creative destruction. And what's that mean? That means that there are ways to improve your market value without destroying what you created to do it. So what does that mean? That means you don't change who you are at the core of your business or your brand. You just provide different ways to be able to use your product, right? So or service, right? So that's what that means. So we need to think more innovatively and creatively to improve, what our business strategy is and stay competitive, but at the same respect, use whatever the latest and greatest technology is to help us get there, right? To advance us. So there's several factors that we have to keep in mind as we go through that. So I'm going to go through the next slide, and that's I'm going to talk about some business processes first, right? So because you have to understand the core business and how business operates before you can even think how technology comes into play, right? So Porter had outlined 5 forces framework that allowed us to show how a business thinks and the direction that they're taking. So the 5 things are the new threats to entrants, threats to substitutes, bargaining power of customers, bargaining power of suppliers, and then competitive rivalry. How do they all come into play? Well, new entrants. Who else are you competing with? Like what else is out there that that are in the same market as your business, and what are you doing to stay competitive, to maintain your brand, your company, and your market share? The other thing is substitutes. Like what else is out there that is competitive, but is it the same quality as your product or your service? You know, making sure that you meet the brand that you're willing to put out there, right? So making sure that you're staying true to who you are. Make sure you're selling it in a way that makes sense, right? So that's where, you know, the threat of substitutes come in. Bargaining power for customers. You know, this is the power that drives prices up and down, right? So what the customer is purchasing, whether it be a product or service, and how that works for them, right? So understanding, you know, how the business is working with your customers, and how your customer likes to be treated, and all that kind of stuff. So knowing how having more power with the higher number of customers is higher bargaining power, right? So and the next thing was around suppliers. So I mean, it kind of goes to me, you surround yourself with good people. So if you surround yourself with successful suppliers that are reliable, dependable, within the same, you know, area that you are, and are trusted individuals and trusted companies, you want to make sure that that you have fair pricing, right? So as you go through and you have a product that you have to deliver, you want to make sure that the suppliers that are providing you the material to get to your product, to make your product or create your product, they are they're there for you, and they're giving you competitive pricing, right? So making sure that, you know, the prices don't increase due to supply and demand kind of thing, you know. If there's low on supply, you want to make sure you stay somewhat, you know, somewhat stable, right? So that's one thing. So, and then there's the competitive rivalry, and that goes in line with your entrants and substitutes, right? So look at the large number or strength of your competitors and determine how many you have, what the quality of their products are in comparison to yours, and making sure that you're selling a quality product, or able to provide a product that is competitive by nature, but also keeps you true to your business values and your core of who you are, but it also meets the customer's expectations and maintains customer satisfaction. So knowing all this and how the business works is really important. So I thought that it was good to talk through this part of the slide before we get into how technology interacts with this. So I'm going to go on to the next one. I'm going to give you a little bit of history lesson on technology now. So with technology, we went through several eras, right? We went through the general purpose mainframe microcomputer era back from 1959 even to present, because we still have some of that. We have personal computing era, we have client server era, enterprise computing era, and then cloud mobile computing era. So what does each of these mean? Well, each of these means, there's different things that that were products of each of those eras, right? So So when we first started with computers, it was mainframes and mini computers that IBM and DEC built, way back when, or digital equipment. So they were able to provide processors and processing power in an area that we never had it, right? So it was ability to compute and do things to meet the new business demand, right? So that's where the general purpose the mainframe and microcomputers came into play. Now, when it comes to personal computing, that's where things changed a little bit, right? Like in the 1980s, where we each all started having our own, personal computer on our desk at work and able to do some of our work via a computer rather than everything handwritten and what we did, before the computers came along. So this is where Apple and Microsoft started coming into play and had their own operating systems and their own little niches on how, standard desktop computers worked. Then you get into the client-server era back, still in the 80s, but, a little bit more advanced, where computers are able to talk to each other and be able to interact with each other, and you're able to share files and share local data within the local area that you're in, just so that you're more efficient and can work amongst each other. So, it's a multi-tiered architecture. So within the server, and there's usually servers, there's desktops, laptops that people utilize at their desk, but then there's also a little bit different, smaller than a mainframe, and smaller than a mini computer, but a server, which is where you stored information. You guys stored each other. You were able to store information together in the same local space so that you guys can share stuff and do your work more effectively. And then we get into enterprise computing and cloud computing. So enterprise computing is where in 1992, which is where the internet was pretty much more prevalent, and the standard protocol that we use is TCP/IP, which is Transmission Control Protocol, Internet Protocol, which is the standard for the networking across the world, is what we use. It's called an IP address. So each device that's linked to a network has an IP address, and that's how we talk to each other via a number, right? So it's the standard protocol used throughout the world, and enterprises all have it in order to connect their internet, all their hardware and software internationally. So everybody requires an IP address in order to talk on that internet. So what's that mean? That means that as computers were advancing, so was the line of business and how we were operating, right? So you went from everything processing on a mainframe to client serving, personal computing and client server, where you're doing some stuff at your local desk in the business and then working with others within that same local area, to enterprise computing, where now you're talking across across companies. So you have your WANs and LANs, right? Your wide area networks and local area networks. They're all connected together. So you may have an office down the street that you're now talking to, right? Then you get into cloud computing and mobile computing. What's that mean, and the advancement of that? The advancement of that is actually even more broad, right? So it goes into now you're talking on the internet. Now you're connected via the internet, so you're able to talk to your coworker who may be in Japan or another country. So being able to share files and store data and documents and do high speed communications between the two is where cloud and mobile computing comes into play, and that's how it changes the face of how we do business today. So needed to give you that little history lesson so you can understand both how core business works, and then how technology works and how it has come and changed over time. So in the next slide, I wanted to talk through some of the interviews that I did as part of this exercise. And one of the things that it was kind of came out during the course of this was sorry, I'm trying to find it on my sheet here. It really stood out during the course of one of my interviews was an interview I did with Jay Cavalcano from Exelon, who's our VP of Cloud and Infrastructure Engineering. One of the things he mentioned to me during the course of the interview was, of course, around how he made a comment to me during the course of it. It was about how all companies are becoming software companies, and I said, how's that? How is that? What do you mean by that? And he went on to explain that knowing what it takes to operate the core business is important. And it helps us to understand how we can integrate technology into making things easier, align to our vision, and be more simplistic, do things more out of the box type way. Well, it also goes to play when it comes into business drivers and what makes a business, what the core business is, how technology plays a role, and how it operates. It's a key part of that vision and strategy as the company progresses forward. So during the discovery phase of the essay, one of the questions I asked, and when he said that that all companies are now software companies, I kind of took a step back and said, well, how do you figure that? So primarily, in order to keep up with the world of mobility, all companies have now become software companies. They've had to figure out a way to stay connected to their customers. And what does that mean? Well, most of them have apps that were built on smart devices where they can do direct business via a mobile device. His example was like Domino's. He says, and various financial institutions and retail stores. They all have mobile applications that now you can install on your app and interact with that company and be able to do business with that company. So what does that mean? It means, like with Domino's, go back to that, you're able to install an application on your mobile device and now order a pizza from any hotspot or anywhere you want to be in the world. So you could do that and maintain, your customer business relationship with them. Same with financial institutions, where now you can simply deposit a check by taking a picture of it with your mobile device. And that will go into the application, and that application will then interact with that business. So knowing how that all works and how companies are starting to change the way they do business is really important. And then the next one was around with Michelle Ferrer, who's also with Exelon, who's a VP of Enterprise-Wide Solutions. She mentions similar to that in the same focus, where she says, focus on business outcomes rather than technology itself. What she means by that is knowing what your core business does and how it operates, and then understand, for instance, like look across the portfolio to see if the investment can be used across the organization, understand the complete model and mindset, outsourcing versus insourcing, whatever models it is. Look to see if there's gaps in those skill sets, and see where the roadmap that you're on, where it fits in, and then know what you need to investigate, where those gaps are, and does technology fill that gap? So you have to figure out what your core business is, understand how you operate it, before you can invest in a technology to help you streamline it, right? So you have to think through and talk through those things to understand them. Similarly, Charles Waymiller, a VP of Infrastructure, also at JP Morgan Chase, he indicated that business needs to plan first, understand its life cycle and competitive advantage before choosing a technology. What's he mean by that? He means the same thing that Michelle did. Understand what you're doing. Understand how you're going to be competitive with what you have. Learn the life cycle of your applications. What's your return on investment? What's your competitive advantage if you were to invest in something different? Knowing what you need to deploy, knowing what the deltas and the competitors are doing, and then figure out what gives you that competitive advantage over your competitors. Not to mention, they need to look at the opportunity cost to see what you're giving up when you do that investment into your new application to support your line of business. So it all comes full circle. You need to know how your business operates. You need to know how business works, and technology is just going to come and go throughout that whole life cycle as you go along. There's one more that I wanted to mention, and that's with James Brignola, who actually is a director of technology for a school district here in Delaware. Um, and he was more in line with train your people by educating them on the simple things, and put money away for the important things before you choose your technology. So it gets into a cadence where you're making sure that the people know what they're doing, how the business operates, and then you can pull technology in and out of it, similar to what Charles and Michelle said, where know your business before you actually invest. And it goes all in line together. So they were all speaking the same language as I went through the interviews, and it seemed very eye-opening as I went through those and talked to them, because I always thought that technology drove business, but we're finding that business actually drives the technology, and that was really exciting for me to see. Excuse me. So there's a couple key points on this slide: business drivers, playing roles, and how it plays key roles in how we implement technology and integrate it. How core business operates, kind of like what we talked about, where it has a life cycle, and determining what that life cycle is. And then there's risk management. So one of the things I want to talk about was the business drivers. So we kind of talked through a little bit about it, ensuring that we understand and go through the business life cycles and how the world of operations works for that business, and then keep an eye on technology as a result, and then integrate it as necessary in order to keep aligned with your, keep helping to align your key pieces for both the company, the employees, and the consumer, and knowing what it takes to make all their lives easier to function. So, and that's where technology comes in. Let's face it, most businesses, like Jay mentioned, are becoming software companies. Understanding, what those business drivers are, and then understanding, how the core business operates, it plays a key part in that strategic and vision and strategic direction to help that company move forward. So most companies will go through a discovery phase, and I went through the discovery phase of this essay, where he mentioned all software companies. All companies were now becoming software companies. It's primarily because they have to keep up with the world of mobility. So it goes into the same core values, so understanding how your business operates. So the next thing I want to talk about is as technology changes and business needs change, business needs to change its strategy to meet or keep up with the requirements that consumers demand. However, performing key functions in play, we can strategize on best ways to achieve both technology and business demands by completing the life cycle analysis of business operations. That's kind of what we talked about, understanding the life cycle and integrating what you need to integrate at any given time. Make sure you're innovating during the course of it, while still keeping an eye on your risks. So risk management comes into play because you need to be aware of the controls and procedures that you have to align to, that are either part of your support of your core business function, or you have to adhere to them via an outside source because of a regulatory requirement. So ensuring that either way you have the right processes, procedures, and are in place, and you're assessing on a continual basis to keep your company up to date and help your consumer confidence and credibility with your company stay afloat. So wanted to just kind of talk through that. Just want to walk through, in conclusion, some of the things that I found. So in conclusion, with knowing all this, what's it mean? This means that companies succeed. They also need to have a succession plan, so they know how to incorporate future changes, run technology projects deploying newer technologies while old ones are still in place, account for the short and long-term plans, understand how aged assets work, determine the best approach for companies as you move forward into the future, and then use things like innovation fairs, groupthink efforts, or to help innovate and empower employees to be innovative, develop new ways to do business. Doesn't matter the size of your organization. Technology consists of tangible and intangible benefits, and using a process to consistently improve will only result in market probability and consumer demand. So I recently watched a video on a movie about Steve Jobs, which I thought was very interesting, and how his career spanned over time, and then and the rise and fall and rise again of Apple, and how that all worked. There was a great quote in that movie that I thought was very interesting. He says, back in 2004, Steve Jobs mentioned, "Let's go innovate tomorrow rather than worry about what happened yesterday." And I thought that was really powerful. And the reason why I say that is because we must move in the direction, the future of a company, to taking notice, being inventive, being creative, innovative, and invest in technology, investing in people. But we need to do that in order to succeed and be successful in the future. So knowing how we transpired, how we got to where we are, knowing the core business values, knowing how we have to integrate technology as we go along. I think it's really important for people to know and understand. So I want to thank you all for listening to me today. Do you want to stop and pause to see if you have any questions? I know I talked a lot about a lot of different things. Was able to cite some references at the end of this, so I can provide that as well. Just thought that this was a really important topic to talk through and give some things for, food for thought for people to think about, so that they can think how business operates and understand core businesses, and then how to integrate technology within it. So to answer the question from the get-go, does business drive technology, or does technology drive business? I don't think it matters. And the reason why I say that is because business is going to integrate technology however it is at any given point in time. It's just how the business stays on top of it and integrates it in their core life cycle style, as their core business operations goes on, is what's important. So keeping a strategic eye on what's out there, being innovative and creative and inventive, empowering their employees, being able to give them those opportunities to create new and inventive ways to do things and to interact with their customers and people, I think is really important. So I want to thank you all for your time today. Please have a wonderful and safe weekend, and have a great day. Thank you.